The tool that I decided to use for this assignment is the YMCA half sit-up test. Now this test is a measurement of the strength and endurance of the abdominal muscles a person has by seeing how many half sit-ups someone can complete within 1 minute. The more sit-ups that they do, the better abdominal strength that they have. In terms of the participant concerns, this test would be appropriate for people of any gender and of any age from, I would say, late teens to at most late 60s. As you can see from this chart, this is data from people who are ages 18 all the way to 66 plus of both male and female. This test, I would say, would be ideal for people in their late teens to early 20s because that is when we are most physically fit and healthy, in my opinion. Now, as you can see in the chart, those who are ages 18 to 25 for both male and female do the most sit-ups compared to any of the other age groups in both genders. This test is also appropriate for people who are generally healthy. You would want to have someone complete the PAR-Q questionnaire before doing this test just to make sure that that the people that you are conducting this test on are healthy and physically fit and have no disabilities or injuries that would end up resulting in more pain or a worsening of that disability or injury. For my test specifically, I did give my participant the PAR-Q questionnaire just so she knew that she was healthy enough to complete this assessment. She is also in her 20s. She's 20 years old and she's a healthy person, so she was ideal for this test. This test would not be appropriate for people with injuries or disabilities or people who do not pass the PAR-Q questionnaire or any other sort of questionnaire about someone's physical health and whether they should be doing tests like this. Someone who is older, who has a heart condition, or who is some sort of injury to their abdomen, or someone who had surgery would not be good for this test because those sort of conditions could be worsened by doing this test. This would be a good test for someone who's trying to see where they are physically compared to other people in terms of their abdominal strength. They could do the test, compare themselves to the chart with their age group and their gender, and then they can work on their abdominal strength for a while and then retake the test to see their improvements. Some administrative concerns involve the equipment I need and the training required and how much time it's going to take and other things like that. So this test required me to have a space, some sort of floor or yoga mat, a timer or a stopwatch, some tape or something to mark off the mat, and then some sort of protractor or something to check that the person's knees were at a right angle. This test did not require much time to conduct because the test itself is only a minute long. Being able to go over the test and practice and set up all the equipment took about 10 minutes, and then recording the results only took a minute because I just had to write it down until I could get home. And then it actually took another day because I did do the test twice to figure out the reliability. Now, in terms of training to conduct this test, I actually watched a video of someone else doing it so that way I could make sure that my participant was doing the sit-ups correctly to the best of my knowledge. I also used the instructions in the textbook to make sure I was setting it up right and conducting the test correctly. People with higher training, those who have degrees in kinesiology or other majors involving physical fitness, would be ideal for conducting this test because they know more about the human body and the movements and exercise and training than I do at the moment. So how to conduct this test. First, you want to have the participant lie down on the mat with their back on the ground facing up. And then you want to have the person have their feet flat on the ground and you want to make sure that their knees are at 90 degrees. To do this, I actually used one of the books that was in my backpack because I did not have a protractor or something to measure the angle correctly. And then you want to mark off where their fingers reach when they're flat on the ground with their arms straight out. Usually you would use tape for this, but I did not have tape, so I had to use a lanyard. And then you want to mark off 3.5 inches from that first mark from towards their feet, because that is where the participant will be reaching to when doing the sit-ups. And then you want to go over the test, make sure the participant knows exactly what they're going to be doing and how long it's going to last. And I made sure that she knew to pace herself. And then we started the test. I set the timer, and then she started, and I counted how many she did within that minute, and then I recorded the results. The next day, we did the same exact thing. Again, I had tape the second day, but I decided to not use it to create more of the same environment as we had the first day. And then I took her results and I put them into this chart in the female section of her age group to determine where she was compared to other people, her age and gender. As you can see, she scored 27 the first time, which would make her somewhere between very poor and poor. The second day she actually completed 32. So again, that would be somewhere between poor and very poor, which makes sense because even though she is a fit 20-year-old female, she does not exercise and she does not do any sort of strength or abdominal muscle training, and she's never really done sports in her life, as we talked about before completing this test. So this was, I believe, an accurate representation of her physical fitness. Here is a reference for the textbook because I used the chart from it, and then I also got the instructions from it, and I used those instructions. So before starting the test, I did show my participant this picture so she could get an idea of how high she would be going compared to normal sit-ups. I laid out the mat and I positioned her so she would be in the correct position to do the half sit-ups correctly. I did not have tape. As I said earlier, I used the lanyard to mark off where she would be reaching to. And then I told her to pace herself. I went over exactly what we were doing, and then we started the test. So I'm in the background right there, and I'm using my phone to time her, and I'm also counting how many sit-ups she's doing as it's happening. You can see my lanyard right there. A way to make this more accurate of a reading would be if I did have tape to make both marks, but unfortunately I did not. Another way to reduce error would be if she had her hair up. I would say she prefers it down, but I think if she had it up, it would have probably helped her. She ended up doing 27 half sit-ups, which, based on that chart from the book, would be considered somewhere between poor and very poor, which makes sense because this day she told me that she went running in the morning for the first time in a long time, so she was really tired during this test, so that made sense to me. And here is the beginning of the second test, which was the day after. We did the same exact thing. We went over the same things. I showed her the picture again, and I decided to use my lanyard again to make it as close to the first test as possible. This day she also decided to not run because she was tired from the day before, so I think that is another reason she did better on this round. I tried to make it so the environment was the same from test 1 to test 2. She ended up doing 32 for this test, which is 5 more than the first test, but is still considered somewhere between the poor and very poor for her age and sex. You can also notice that in this test, she's wearing jeans because she forgot to bring her sweatpants this day. So I think if she had worn the same clothing, that would have also reduced some error a little bit, even though her scores were very close both times. Some of the ways that I could have reduced error would be if I had had the proper equipment. I did not have tape, so the sit-ups might have not been perfect like I would have hoped. Having the proper training to execute the test would have definitely reduced error. All I was able to do to train myself was watch a video and follow the instructions as closely as possible. But of course, someone who is trained in performing these tests, someone who is trained in exercise and physical activity, would have probably done a much better job, an accurate job. And lastly, another way to reduce error would have been creating the same exact environment for both tests, meaning for both test 1 and test 2 having the same audience or amount of people or sound in the background, having her wear the same types of clothing, having the same exact setup, and basically just making it so everything was the same, so that way both tests would be similar. But of course, due to her having completed the test the first day, the second day she did better because she knew exactly what she was going to be doing this day.